2, 3.
We're rejoining Mrs. Sheila Lowe in her interview. I just want to find out from you before we move into the after-school activities. What was your favorite subject at school? Who was your favorite teacher? How did that influence where you went from there?
My best subject was art. Mrs. Burroughs, I think, was the art teacher.
Yes.
She was so sweet.
Yes.
Let me tell you what I loved. I loved art. I loved the fact that we did things like musical appreciation and elocution, things that we just don't bother to do anymore in school. And my best results were in languages, especially Spanish. Mrs. Sturgeon, she became Mrs. Caron.
Yes.
She was very mad at me because she was just so frustrated. She was one who was really frustrated with the fact that I just wasn't working, and yet I was doing well and, you know, had the ability. I can understand how it must have been frustrated, and I have no excuse or explanation. I don't know why.
It's a rebel in you.
I just didn't do it.
Yeah.
Miss Stewart was a miracle worker. Miss Stewart was amazing. Miss Stewart took a complete dunce at math. And when she was done with me for the year, I got a credit. As soon as I finished taking that exam, I forgot everything about math and went back to the calculator.
So having been a rebel in school, but having achieved,
Yes.
what did you do after?
You know, my dad loved to build. So all our lives he was building. We were always living in half-finished houses.
Yes.
And as soon as he'd finished building one, he'd sell it and he'd start building another one, and we'd move into it before it was finished.
Yeah.
So he was always with drawings and drafting, things like that. And so I got interested, and I thought, okay, so art is not something that people see. It worried my parents, the art thing. It really worried them. But I said, okay, so let me do architecture, because architecture it was more sonorous, had a ring to it, you know. And so that was my first choice. I went away and studied architecture. I did my first, I keep talking about the first university I dropped out of was the University of Manitoba. And I went to the University of Manitoba because all the architects I knew in Jamaica at the time had graduated from that. And I got pneumonia. I got locked out of the residence one night because I got home after 10, and it was 35 degrees below zero, and I got pneumonia. And so I came home before exams, and she was by that time the doctor. They met me at the airport.
You're speaking about your sister, Dr. Buren.
Sorry, I'm pointing.
Yes.
My sister, Dr. Lowe,
Yes.
was among the people that actually picked me off the plane and carried me straight from the airport into the National Chest Hospital. And when I recovered, it was what to do next, you know. My friend Rosalie Hart, who is now Rosalie Goodman, had just decided to go to France as part of an au pair program, and she persuaded me to come along with her. So I decided to complete my architecture in France. Off I went to France to learn French as a way of preparing myself to get into the École de Beaux-Arts in Paris, where I was going to do the architecture. My dad got sick. He got very sick. And while I was still studying in France, studying French, he was flown to London for what we didn't know. And I just literally abandoned France and went to London to be there. It turned out that it was kidney stones, I think. But we didn't know what it was. We were really frightened. And he had had a bad bug earlier on, and he had had peritonitis. So here I am now in London. I've missed the entrance time to get into the university in Paris. So I started looking around in London for some place to go. And of course, everybody told me it's too late, you have to apply next year, and so on. Eventually, I heard about one school in Kingston-on-Thames. And when I called up, it turned out that the head of the school was there. He answered the phone because it was during holiday. And he said, okay, well, come out and talk to me. He gave me instructions how to find a place, and I got totally lost. And I got there an hour late. So by the time I got there, I was just in a state. I was in a panic. You know, I had been fretting about Daddy. I got lost, this, that, and the other. So I go there and he interviews me, and he said, so what made you choose to come to this? It was Kingston School of Art and Polytechnic. I said, well, you know, it was too late and I couldn't get in. Nobody else wanted to give me an interview. And he said, that's not how we like to be chosen. And he ended up admitting me. And so I ended up doing a couple of years more of architecture. But in the interim, I was coming home for holidays, got engaged, eventually decided, because I had to choose between completing the architecture or staying in the relationship.
Yeah.
And I chose to stay in the relationship and gave up the architecture. So we got married, we had 2 little boys, and then I went back to university, and I went to UWI. So this is my 4th university, I think, by now. Did my first degree in Arts and General Studies, Languages and Literature. And then subsequently I did a master's in drama in the US.
Well, how did you get into all the social work that you've been doing? You started the Area Youth Foundation.
Oh.
And I know that you have done a lot of stuff in that
Because I always knew that there was a power in art to transform life and people, and that it wasn't just icing on the cake. And I wanted to get more and more involved in that, and I saw how, in fact, it became the study that I wanted to do for my master's thesis. I looked at several examples. Sister in Theatre Collective was in existence, and I was impressed with what they were doing.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got into that.
Can you tell us some more about that? What is the Area Youth Foundation?
The Area Youth Foundation, we started, okay, the Area Youth Foundation actually came about by accident, like just about everything else in my life, my unplanned life. I was director. We had a theatre company called.
We have to wrap up that particular area right now, so we will come back to that.